A very warm welcome to you. This is Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And here we bring you up to speed with trends in the Nigerian business space and not forgetting the global economy. And we are sure set to do just that on today's edition of the program. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Let's start off by bringing to you major headlines that have made the news this hour. And those were the major headlines making the news in the world of business this hour. And away from that now, let us take a look at how the markets performed in its last trading session on Tuesday. The markets were closed on Wednesday to mark the Democracy Day celebration. But looking at how the markets fared, we did see the bears dominate the markets, down by 0.16%, with the all-share index at 99,793.71. The market capitalization hit 56.4 trillion naira, with a volume of trade at 848.965 million and the value of trade at 16.551 billion naira. We also did see 8,064 deals exchange hands on the floor of the exchange on Tuesday. Yes, on Tuesday. But let's move now to the top gainers from Tuesday, where we did see a total of 29 gainers. But looking at the top three gainers, we do have total on the chart right there, up by 9.98% at 388.90. And Presco is also right there on the chart, up by 9.97% and going for 323.20. That is 323 naira per share price. And UPDC is on the chart as well, up by 9.92% and going for 1 naira 33 kobo per share price. And on the flip side, let us take a look at the bottom losers. In total, we did have about 19 losers. But looking at the top three losers from Tuesday, with NASCON topping the losers chart and down by 9.91%, going for 36 naira 80 kobo. And Thomas Way right there on the top losers chart as well, and down by 9.66%, going for 1 naira 59 kobo per share price. May Baker is also right there on the losers chart, down by 7.13% and going for 5 naira 60 kobo per share price. And right about now, let us take a look at the top trades and market movers charts, looking at the stocks that recorded the most volume of trades from Tuesday, with Fidelity Bank topping the top trades and market movers chart at 293 million shares, followed by the Nigerian breweries at 102 million shares and Zenith Bank at 74.3 million shares. And now let's take a look at the different sectors and how they fared. Starting off with the NGX banking, ending the day in the bullish sentiment, recording growth at 0.71%. NGX Industrial also up by 0.01%. NGX Consumer Goods up as well by 0.10%. NGX Oil and Gas ending the day recording tremendous growth, up by 2.08%. NGX Insurance also up by 1.17%. A sea of greens coming from the different sectoral performance right there. We hope to see this maintained today as the market will resume trading today. But let's go on now to other major markets across the sub-Saharan African region and how they performed yesterday, because this market indeed opened yesterday, Wednesday. We begin with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, ending Wednesday down by 0.07% at 77,050.80. And we have seen the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, maintain the bearish sentiment for a while now. Or we will be looking out to see just how well the markets will be performing today. And the Ghanaian Stock Exchange remaining unchanged again for like the third consecutive day at 3,773.52. And lastly, we do have there the Nairobi Securities Exchange, ending Wednesday in the bullish sentiment, having recorded some gains, up by 0.12% at 103.29. Well, there you have it, a review of the major markets, starting from here in Nigeria to markets across South Africa, Ghana, and Kenya. Away from that now, let us take a look at the major business dailies for today. What are the stories making the cover page? We'll begin with the newspaper of choice, that is the Daily Trust newspapers. But obviously, looking at the business page, you will have to scroll further into the newspaper for today, looking at page 19 of the Daily Trust newspapers for today. That is where we have the business segment. We begin with a major story right there, just underneath the nameplate, that says Exodus, company income tax reduced by 12% in the first quarter of 2024. Exodus, company income tax reduced by 12% in the first quarter of 2024. And the summary there says that mining sector leads as manufacturing records lowest contribution, and VAT increases to 1.43 trillion. The story is basically talking about the mass exodus of companies from Nigeria and how that has impacted the levels of revenue generation in form of taxation. But if you want to get full details of that story, you can find it on page 19 of the Daily Trust newspapers. And now to other stories right there. On the business page of the Daily Trust newspapers, there's another one that says CNG. Federal government plans 50% subsidy for road transport unions. CNG. Federal government plans 50% subsidy for road transport unions. And that can also be found on page 19 of the Daily Trust newspapers for today. And lastly, the story coming from the Daily Trust newspaper says ITO host community disagreement threatens oil production. ITO host community disagreement threatens oil production. So grab yourself a copy of the Daily Trust newspapers for today to get full details on all of these headlines that we have highlighted. Away from the Daily Trust newspapers now, let us move on to yet another national daily that focuses on business and economic news. That is the Business Day newspapers. And right there, the major story right beneath the nameplate says, no way through. Shenzhen visa rejection hit 4-year high. No way through. Shenzhen visa rejection hit 4-year high. And the summary there says that Nigeria visa denial costs rise to 3.4 euros, 3.4 million euros, I beg your pardon. And rejection seen worsening in 2024. And you can find the full details of that story on page 31 inside of the Business Day newspapers. And to the right there is another story that says that Nigeria's crude cargoes face stiff competition from cheaper rivals. Nigeria's crude cargoes face stiff competition from cheaper rivals. And that can be found on page 31 again of the Business Day newspapers. And moving away from that now, another headline says that shutdowns shake up once darling tech industry. Shutdowns shake up once darling tech industry. That story can be found on page 30 within the Business Day newspapers. And again, another story, or the story that we did see on the Daily Trust newspapers, talking about the drop in the level of company tax that was generated in the first quarter. This headline says that record losses sink manufacturers' tax to 3-year low. Record losses sink manufacturers' tax to 3-year low. And that can be found on page 30 of the Business Day newspapers. And lastly, volatile Naira renews pension funds push offshore investment. Volatile Naira renews pension funds push for offshore investment. And that is the much that we will be taking from the Business Day newspapers. But right about now, let us cross over to the United Kingdom, looking at the Financial Times. What are the stories highlighted on the cover page for today? But let's take a quick look with the major story that's saying that energy watchdog foresees staggering oil glut while producers keep pumping. A story coming from the energy sector right there in the United Kingdom. We have seen, demand slow in recent times, and we're currently also in the era of lower prices in terms of oil, but you can grab yourself a copy of that to get full details of that story. And again, another headline says that the French conservative leader thrown out of party after calling for pact with Le Pen. French conservative leader thrown out of party after calling for pact with Le Pen. And that story can be found on page 10 of the Financial Times for today. I believe that is all that we will be highlighting on the cover page of the Financial Times for today, the 13th of June, 2024. But let's quickly cross over now to the United States, looking at the Wall Street Journal. And on the Wall Street Journal, quite a number of stories highlighted there, but looking at a few of them, the first story right there, or the major story right there rather, says that Musk blurred boundaries with women at SpaceX. Musk blurred boundaries with women at SpaceX. And if you want to get full details of what that story is really referring to, that story can be found on page A8 of the Wall Street Journal. Quite a number of interesting stories there, as you can see highlighted on the Wall Street Journal for today. And if you want to, get full details of those stories or those headlines that you have seen on your screens, you know exactly what it is that you should do. Grab a copy of the national dailies for today and, get informed and get educated in all of this. Well, away from that now. Yesterday, we did see Nigeria, emerge, celebrate its democracy rule after 25 years of, the change or the transition that we did witness from military rule to democratic rule in the year 1999. And we did, ask Nigerians on social media their thoughts on how Nigeria has fared in the area of economic development. Here is the question we put out on social media. Share your thoughts. Looking at Nigeria's democratic journey, how would you rate her economic performance. And we did get quite a number of responses. Well, let's take a look at a few of these responses that we did receive. And here Shehu Mohammed is saying that no economic progress in the country since 1999. Only few political class are enjoying. Well, interesting comment there from Shehu Mohammed. Minjin Queen is saying very, very, very poor. We will appreciate if you, explain to us or give us, some more detail on why your response is that it is very poor. We would like for you to, explain even further. But Omo Iya teacher is saying 2/10. That is really poor, way below average. Well, thank you for sending in your response. Abdul Jimo is saying democracy just came to satisfy few people, while majority are wallowing in abject poverty. It's very pathetic indeed. Very pathetic indeed. Abdul Al Hassan Habibu is saying very poor. Again, another comment talking about how poor Nigeria has fared. But let's move on now to other comment. Amin is saying, I think Nigeria have done really good in terms of her economy relating to other African countries. He's comparing Nigeria's performance with other African countries, and he says that Nigeria has done, fairly well, better than other African countries that did switch over to democratic rule at some point. And Sunshine Sport is saying only politicians are the real citizens who enjoy all wealth of this country. So democracy to them has yielded a positive result. Thank you, Sunshine Sport, for sending in your comment. Let's take a look at some of the comments that we have received. Abdul Kadri Gaba is saying, we are already in the hands of bad managers economically. Thank you for sending in your comment. Away from that now, Senator Amma is saying that economic performance is 0.0% and corruption is now at its peak in the democratic system of leadership. And we lose hope for the system they promised to renew. They promised to renew hope, but ended up betraying us. Well, thank you for sending in your comment. And Sani M is saying very, very poor. Interesting. Thank you, Sani, for sending in your comment. And Mohammed Yero is saying absolutely poor. Okay, thank you, Mohammed, for sending in your comment. I believe that is all the comments that we will be highlighting today on the program. But I do have my guest joining me right now to discuss the Nigerian democracy and the Nigerian economy. And I'm joined now by the lead director of the Center for Social Justice, Eze Onyekpere. Thank you very much for joining us on Business Daily.
My pleasure.
You have seen the comments from most Nigerians, but we would like to hear from you, as someone that plays closely within the governance space in Nigeria. We have seen, 2 years or 2 decades, I beg your pardon, of democratic governance in Nigeria. I'd like for you to just reflect in retrospect. How would you say Nigeria has fared economically, and what are the significant milestones that have, been achieved during this period?
Well, let me start by saying that where we dreamt we should have been, we are ushering in the new civil rule and democratic dispensation. We are the more or less El Dorado. We are allowed to make inequality will decrease, and then economic policies will be made on a democratic basis so that have access to a higher standard of living, healthcare will improve, education will improve, transportation will improve, access to electricity will be for everybody. So these were the dreams that we had in 1998 and 1999 when we were so happy in Nigeria. But if you ask me today whether those dreams have been realized, whether those things we dreamt of have happened, of course, your guess is as good as mine. Question will be, are we in 1998-99? This is a critical question. Not just on the nominal level of saying, oh, things have improved, comes you have this. If you look at the quantum of resources that has passed by Nigeria, or we've managed since 1999 to date, then you know that we are simply snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. You know, in the earlier days of this democratic dispensation, when we are complaining, people were saying, oh, let's have a call, it's a learning experience. But nobody in his right senses can begin to talk about still learning at 25 years. A child, an adult that can even procreate and start a family of its own today, whether a man or a woman. So what we've done is to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory over the 25 years.
Well, thank you for that, even though you have painted a picture that unfortunately doesn't look so good. But we will be talking about, you know, the mismanagement of resources, the different sectoral performance. So there is much more to come after the break, so do stay. And you're still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And just before the break, we started a conversation on how the Nigerian economy has fared since the switch over to democratic rule. And I still have my guest with me, who is the lead director of the Center for Social Justice, Eze Onyekpere. Thank you again very much for joining us, or for coming on Business Daily.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, before the break, you painted a picture that unfortunately really doesn't look good. But we cannot shy away from the fact that that is the current reality that Nigeria is facing. So I'd like for us to speak, you know, to the area of the role of governance in economic development. Over the years, there has been, you know, a heated polity now, or heated governance space within Nigeria. And I will like to hear how all that has happened in the past years has affected economic development. You can also, you know, give examples where governance failures did directly affect economic activities.
Well, we have to understand that economic governance cannot be separated from political governance. The whole is a complete package, it's a totality. We now know that what happens in politics will affect the economy. First of all, we have a system where we are putting in a lot of resources into paying us, maintaining a bloated bureaucracy, which is supposed to deliver results in the economy. But unfortunately, results in the economic sphere that should have been used to enhance. Let's look at even the issue of the oil of economy contributing over 80% in exchange and over 50% of the government it from an all-time high of about 2.1 million barrels a day under the Jonathan government to a struggling to do 1.2 million barrels a day in May of 2024, on a steep decline. Theft. It is government that should prevent theft. No excuses about pipeline vandalization. It is the security agencies and government that should prevent pipeline vandalization. The other excuses of lack of investment over the years. I am not the one to go and attract the investors. It's the government. And the president is even the Minister of Petroleum. Buhari was also the Minister of Petroleum. So you have the failure of governance happening at the highest level, not even at the ministerial level, at the level of the commander-in-chief. If for any reason we're able to go back to 2 million barrels a day and produce and account for it, in the next 6 months, the value of the naira, our national currency, will come back under 1,000. And of course, a lot of things will take shape. All these companies that are closing shop today, they may not do so because they may have access to foreign exchange to buy. So you cannot separate political governance and what I call political banditry from doing political banditry is going to result in economic banditry. The confidence of the majority of the electorate, even if you call yourself a president or a governor, no way your policies are going to, and the people you purport to serve.
And over the years, we have seen, Nigeria constantly depend on oil. And this is despite the numerous talks that has been, had, regarding economic diversification. On one hand, we have the oil problem of over-reliance of oil. On the other hand, we have conversations around fuel subsidy and corruption generally. But let's hear from you. Where would you say Nigeria is at this moment in the area of economic diversification?
Well, the discussion about the economy did not start today. It's been on for years. And so much resources are in agriculture to say we want to do the value chain from planting down to harvesting up to value addition. Let's not export the commodities raw, or let's not just use up all of them in their raw form. But the challenge is that most of the resources did not get to the actual farmers. I mean, I'm using the agriculture, all those anchor borrowers program in the last administration. Where we are today. And like I told you, that governance is a complete package. You can't separate one from the other. The failure to optimize the security architecture and to protect life also has led to the collapse of farming, has also led to the current food insecurity where we are now contemplating importing food, importing staples. So if you don't make the farm secure for farmers to go, then there is no way you can be discussing diversifying and making agriculture another very productive part of the economy that can even add more foreign exchange and provide more jobs. We all read every day in the newspapers how the so-called bandits, really, they are terrorists, but the federal government simply gave them a baptismal name, are asking they go to plant, asking them to pay before they harvest. In the farms, women. So that's not the way to build a productive economy. Now, in the last 1 year, you've seen the number of companies that have folded up. Why are they folding up? Because the ease of doing business is not there. The environment is no longer conducive. These are companies.
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost our guests there. I was speaking with the lead director of the Center for Social Justice, Eze Onyekpere, and he has been appraising the performance of the Nigerian economy since the switch over to democratic rule. And he obviously did say that governance and economic development go hand in hand, and whatever is done or implemented on one side has a way of trickling down to the performance of the other. He also did go on to speak to the area of economic diversification and where Nigeria currently is in its drive towards economic diversification, emphasizing the need for Nigeria to take the area of food security and agriculture more seriously. But let's go on a short break. When we return, the conversation continues. To stay. And you're still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust Television. My guest, who is Eze Onyekpere, the lead director of the Center for Social Justice, is still with me. Before the break, you were talking to, issues around economic diversification and where Nigeria currently is, and you were talking to how the area of agriculture and food security should be given paramount attention. Can you go on with your thoughts?
Okay, so we have discussed the issue of agriculture and how we could have used it to do more value added in the Nigerian economy in terms of creating jobs, creating raw materials, and even food for export, or even adding value to it to earn more foreign exchange. If you look at another sector, particularly issues around manufacturing, we started a policy, an auto policy, around adding more value to vehicles that are produced or assembled in Nigeria, but midway, we abandoned it. And today, that policy, those brilliant ideas that we have in our policy, nobody has taken them to the next level. Take, for instance, the CNG vehicles that the president proposed to put in place so as to alleviate the hardship from the fuel price increase. What I was expecting that we could have engaged the local assembly of manufacturing companies instead of giving contract for somebody to go and import. And there are some of these companies that have facilities to make up to 30,000 of those CNGs in a year. And so the political environment of awarding contracts to cronies simply on which you could create more jobs, or even when that company produces more, it will make more profit to pay more operating income tax to government. So at the end of the day, it should have been a win-win for everybody. Even the thousands of cars that they buy for legislators, ministers, commissioners, permanent secretaries, that they go to Japan to buy all those private jeeps, Toyota vehicles, if they were being assembled or made in Nigeria, that will also add to the economic fortunes of the country. So that's why I'm saying the political decisions that we make reverberate in the economic sector, and there is no way we can separate the two. And those political decisions, until we get it right, we are not going to make so much progress. Like I said in my introduction, nominally, there's no way we would have made progress between 1999 and today. But I'm saying, if you are giving $400 to $500 billion, and all the progress you make, if a value for money analysis is run through the progress you make, you've only recorded $15 to $25 billion progress. Then there is no way, in all honesty, anybody can say that you've made sufficient progress. I'm saying that today, Nigeria should have been in a position where we have been having uninterrupted power supply. And that electricity will have been available to Nigerians at a reasonable rate which they can afford. We could have today been satisfying all the home demand for food, agriculture, and then have a little. Today, we should have been meeting up to 60 to 70% of our vehicle needs. Of the needs in the pharmaceutical sector, I can begin to count them all and all. Those labor-intensive sectors like garments, footwear, we should have started exporting by now. Good quality products that will compete in the international market. So these are the critical challenges that are, here to stay for the meantime. And until we address their links to the politics, we are not going to get it right.
Indeed, we need to address these issues from the root. But I would like for us to touch now on, the macroeconomic indices and economic inclusivity and what we have seen so far in the area of, employment. Currently, unemployment rate stands at 5%, and this is according to the National Bureau of Statistics. We also have seen, the misery index increase, inflation increase, stagnation increase as well. So let us talk towards, creating jobs and employment for sustainable employment for Nigerians. How would you gauge Nigeria's performance so far in the area of, employment for the Nigerian youth?
Macroeconomic indicators we are talking about, whether it's the area of employment, whether it is in inflation, whether it's in the value of the exchange rate, they are tied to the overall performance of the economy. I think the biggest challenge we are facing now is the developing and runaway inflation, which was caused by two critical policies of the administration: the removal of the fuel subsidy price and the floating of the naira. On their own, these two policies may not be bad, but it is their implementation in terms of what was done before, the policy measures that were undertaken before they were done, and what was the response to ease the challenges and the burdens that they impose on the economy and the hardship they bear. So you cannot have a situation where there is runaway inflation, where the cost of borrowing is so high, access to credit for manufacturing and service sector, and then we expect an increase in employment. Employment must definitely go down. When we are discussing factory closures, those who are working in those factories that are closed will definitely join the queue on the labor market. And then challenges which could have been translated into opportunities are not being taken seriously. For instance, in the agricultural sector, the cost of food items, rice, beans, potato, maize, everything, even tomato and onions, would have been an opportunity for younger Nigerians to start going into farming, or even the soil farming or backyard farming, or even livestock farming. But the insecurity in the land has not allowed us to take advantage of those opportunities. So when companies are closing, and a lot of the goods and services they produce are just sitting down in the warehouse, nobody is buying because the purchasing power has reduced, there is no way jobs can increase. There is no way you can have more employment. These things will definitely lead to unemployment. So I think that what has happened after 1 year of President Tinubu, I thought by now, particularly the speech he made yesterday or the comments he made on May 29th, we should have had the opportunity to sit back with a think tank of the best Nigerians, whether they're in APC, PDP, or Labour Party anywhere, and be able to devise a way forward to say, we have created the naira, we have removed subsidy. What is the way forward to cut down the hash? For instance, we have been hearing the story of the Omic refinery coming on board. Since the Buhari days, it was promised the Christmas before the election. Later they shifted it to shortly before the election. Later they said by December last year. Later they said February.
Why must we continue telling these promises? So when we reduce the things we need to import, our currency will get value. For instance, we saw that crude oil, import refined petroleum and food constitute close to 40% of what we are spending our foreign exchange on. Can we begin to refine these products at home? If we refine them at home, okay, we save those dollars we should have used to import them, and it will help reduce the demand for the greenback and shore up the value of the local currency. These are things we need to do, the demand side of the greenback of those foreign currencies. And the supply side will have been for us to produce more crude oil, at least in the short term, and then use it to supply more foreign exchange to the market, and then to stabilize the economy. So all these challenges we are having are avoidable if the plans have been done properly, or if there is a proper team that is responding to the challenges that have arisen from these two critical reform policies.
You have talked about ensuring that plans are carried out to the end. But over time, we have had, great policy documents, great plans, from the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan to the Vision 2020, and a lot other, social investment programs like the Empower and the likes. But I'd like for you to speak towards, future economic policy direction and the implementation of these policies, especially because it is not news that Nigeria has great policies on paper and not so much is being done in the area of implementation. So what would you suggest in the area of policy direction moving forward?
No, there is an intellectual cobweb I see in your suggestion that we have great policies. Any supposedly great policy that is not implementable or that is not yielding results is not a great policy. Those policies have some fundamental flaws because nobody talked clearly about implementation strategy. So for me, you raised some issues like the issues around the social sector. You are trying to distribute money or empower poor people, basic healthcare provision fund, and all those things you have on paper. Those policies should have been followed with an implementation strategy based on transparency that ensures that the actual recipients of those monies are the poorest of the poor who are deserving. Just like the Anchor Borrowers Program, the implementation strategy should have ensured that political and briefcase farmers are out of the picture. And for instance, how do you do these things like the social security investment? Why don't you have a portal where the names of all the beneficiaries are published? Their names, their town, their villages, their NIN number, their identification, so that if you state the people who are benefiting from this from my village, I can from here tell you whether that person is qualified or not, and shame those who are not qualified and possibly prosecute them who are taking money that belongs to the poor. So any program, any plan, any idea that cannot be implemented is not a great idea. So that's my take. As you are planning, you must think of the implementation strategy. And going forward, for instance, even in the fiscal sphere, where we are borrowing on a daily basis, the way we are borrowing is not in consonance with the demands of transparency and accountability. Because in other parts of the world, the more the government borrows, the more infrastructure they build, the more the ease of doing business improves. So what it means is that as government is borrowing and doing infrastructure and more companies are coming up, they are creating jobs. They are paying more tax to the government. So at the end of the day, the government is in a good position to pay back those loans or even to stop borrowing. But in our own case, as we are borrowing, the more we borrow, the more companies close, the more employment we have. So what is the solution? The president and his minister sit back in one little corner and decide we need to borrow. Just 2 persons. Even if you're elected, it doesn't mean you have to begin to decide what will affect generations to come. Normally, what should happen is that there should be a notice of intention to borrow, published in the Gazette, published on the website of the Budget Office or the Ministry of Budget and Planning, Ministry of Finance, and saying this is the reasons why we want to borrow. We want to borrow from A, B, C, D. And then these are the terms and the conditions of the borrowing. You now send it to the National Assembly. On the basis of this notice, publicly available, the National Assembly will convene a public hearing of Nigerians to have their say on whether we ought to borrow or not, and how that borrowing will benefit us and how it should be applied. Okay? And it is after this public hearing, you've gathered public inputs, that you now come to the decision that we must borrow and this is how we want to spend it. But these days, the finance minister, the president, or anybody at all sits down and sees one loan. Oh, we want to borrow $1 billion. The president approves. It's sent to Ababio's National Assembly. It is read and approved, and the eyes have it just without public participation. So this is a cruel joke. The lack of transparency, the lack of opportunities for citizens to make inputs, the civil dictatorship is part of why the economy is not moving. It's part of why we don't have fiscal prudence. It's part of why monies are borrowed and mismanaged. Do you know that Nigeria has borrowed more than $7 billion to improve girl child education in northern Nigeria over the years? And tell me, is girl child education improving? Is it moving the needle? Rather, the statistics are showing that the girl child education is getting worse in that part of the country. So where went that money? Over $7 billion that was borrowed. So that's why I'm saying, until we introduce popular participation and transparency in the way we run the affairs of the state, all those things you call great plans are simply agenda for the political class to steal Nigeria plan. I dare them to tell me where they have invested over $97 billion that they claim that we're going about 104 or so. Now, the law says you can only invest in capital expenditure and human development. Can the Nigerian government show me bridges, hospitals, educational institutions, power plants, roads and railways worth $50 billion? I will waive the other $50 billion for them. And even the deceit in the whole thing is that they tell us we are going 97. We're not going 97. There is 30 trillion naira ways and means. If you add it,
have been speaking with Eze Onyekpere, who is the lead director of the Center for Social Justice, and he has spoken extensively towards how we can grow the Nigerian economy and how the Nigerian democratic economy has fared in the past 25 years. But join the conversation on social media. Let us hear your thoughts on the discourse for today. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.